He's been in here in person, and I love chatting with him, and he does a great job on Fox for both professional and collegiate football. Former head of NFL refs for the National Football League now, along with another former head of NFL refs and Mike Pereira, Fox Rules Analyst Dean Blandino here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Dean?
I'm good. I'm just glad I'm no longer the head of officiating today.
Right.
Today's not a good day.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What do you think is happening in the league office today based on what we saw at the end of Monday Night Football last night with Tony Corrente calling Cassius Marsh for taunting by staring down the Steelers bench outside the numbers?
Well, they're reviewing. I know if I were there, I would have had a conversation with Tony last night. I wouldn't have waited till today. I would want to get his perspective on what happened. Certainly that call on Marsh. What did you see? Why did you call taunting? And then ask, hey, what happened there? It looked like you bumped him. Did you lose your balance? It's hard for me to sit here and say that I would imagine any world where Tony Corrente would do that intentionally, but you watch the video and you go, man, what the heck happened? So, they're looking at all of it. They're reviewing the game like they normally do, and I would imagine they've had conversations with Tony and the rest of the crew just to kind of figure out what, their perspective of it.
Well, you knowing what this emphasis is this year and your ear to the ground knowing what's going on in the NFL, do you think the league wants that flag in that instance against that action by the player last night?
I don't. Here's the thing. There's two ways to look at this. There's what the approach was, and I think the league, the competition committee, the coaches subcommittee, which works with the competition committee, they saw a decline in sportsmanship. They saw this in-your-face stuff, the standing over the ball carrier after the tackle, the getting in somebody's face. They saw that not being called, so they wanted to clean that up, and that's good, and we've seen that before. But it feels like we've gone another step to where even listening to Tony in the pool report, he said he was posturing. Well, if he didn't say anything and he's just kind of staring at the bench, that's a Pandora's box. Now I get the in your face stuff. I get the standing over, look at me. That's gonna lead to other things, altercations later in the game. You want to nip that in the bud, but this. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know what was said or what Tony was seeing from his perspective. It just feels like another level, and I'm not sure that is what the committee intended.
No, I guess we could all assume what he saw, which is what the rest of us saw, which is we saw a player, start walking towards a bench not his own, strutting, and he maybe did not see the fact that Marsh said nothing. He might have assumed Marsh was saying something and barking. He had no idea it was just a stare because he's only seeing Marsh's back as he's walking, even inching closer to a bench that he used to belong to, by the way. I don't know if officials know history of every single player out on the field, but he had no idea if he was barking at him. But isn't there any sense of moment and contextualizing that needs to happen here, Dean? 3:30 to go in a game, whole country watching. That's now a 3-point game. You know what the score is and what time it is. Why throw the flag on that, man? Why?
Yeah, and look, Tony's a veteran referee. He's been around a long time, and he has good judgment. He's been a good referee for a long time, and you do hope that in that moment, look, a foul's a foul, and if it's there, you got to call it regardless of 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter or the opening kickoff. But that moment, it felt like I would have wanted to see more. Look, if Marsh gets up and he's in the Steelers bench area and he's jawing and he's up in somebody's face, that's a foul. You can't do that. But to be kind of near midfield and just staring, it just felt like you could have given him a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt. And then you get on top of that, then you get the flag and the bump, and it's just tough to kind of explain the whole deal. It's a tough one.
Dean Blandino here on the Rich Eisen Show. The thing that I think that outrages fans the most is not just because there's no context in the call, right? There is, a player that's performing this stare and strut, but there's also no context, as I just said, about 3:30 to go, forces a punt. I'm going to call this penalty. I know it's a fresh set of downs. I could essentially end this game right now by doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's one thing that outrages fans. But the thing that's the most outrageous is the concept of lack of accountability. That you hear coaches basically say, and Matt Nagy said last night, guys have to know there's an emphasis. Guys have to know that they shouldn't even give an official a thought in their head to twitch towards their flag. How about the official not twitching towards their flag? How about something in their head to say, I'm not going to do it because it's not worthy of the foul at the moment? How about that, Dean?
Yeah, there's no question. And officials are held accountable. I think it happens more behind the scenes.
Correct.
It's not out in the open. It's not public. So I think that some
How
people
so?
have a hard time
Explain
with
to
that.
explain to folks.
There's an evaluation system. That game, any game, you're going to get graded on every call you make. You're going to get graded on calls you should have made. You're going to get graded on your mechanics, your positioning. So there's former officials that go through each game and they evaluate the performance on a lot of different levels. And then you get, so for me, if I'm looking at that play, I think it's what does the league do with this going forward? Do they say, good call, Tony, that's correct. We're going to put that on a training tape for every official to see that that's taunting, and we're going to reinforce that call, and you're going to see more of that? Or are you going to take the approach, look, that's not, you made the call, it's not a good call, we're going to give you a downgrade, we're going to put it out to the officials to say we do not want this call, we want to see more. Here's some examples of what we feel are taunting. I mean, that would be the approach that I would hope happens. But they are held accountable, and if you don't grade out well, you don't get a postseason assignment. And if you don't grade out well, you are at risk of losing your employment with the NFL, and officials get let go every off season. So there is an accountability. It's a profession that is under intense scrutiny.
Yes.
I can't think of other professions where we're talking about it, right? We make decisions. You're an accountant. You make a decision. You might have made a mistake. You go home. We're not talking about it on the Rich Eisen Show, but it is something that fans want. They want to know that they're held accountable. I guarantee you they are. But again, what is the league going to do with this? Are they going to say that's a good call and we want to see that going forward? Or are we going to say, hey, wait a minute, that's not what we intended, and we don't want to see calls like that going forward?
Well, Dean, you didn't hear hour one. We called out a CPA in Rancho Mirage earlier to say that they screwed up somebody's taxes.
Yeah. Well,
it was an awful.
That guy,
fans are still calling in. But in all seriousness, though, I totally understand the scrutiny, but there is an issue with the fans right now, certainly on this subject alone, when it comes to officiating. There's a credibility issue. This is definitely a PR scenario. What about doing what the NBA does? Put out a last 5-minute report based on what we saw last night. So everybody knows, was Tony Corrente downgraded for calling this taunting penalty on Cassius Marsh? Or does the league say, yes, we want that called? I think it's important that fans know that the league does or does not want that called. We sat there, we saw it. It's a big game. It's week 9. It's a difference between potentially a team being 4-5 and 3-6 and 5-3 or 500. It's really that big. Why not let it be known? Dean?
Yeah, I mean, the NBA, I think there's pros and cons. I think some of that, it comes from a good place. I don't know if that's worked out. You've heard like LeBron James and others kind of be critical of the 2-minute report. I get it. I think there would be some value. I don't know if I worry, because if you get all these reports and you're seeing, hey, those officials made 8 mistakes in the last 2 minutes, that undermines their credibility as well. I think there's ways to do it. There's ways to communicate with the fans, whether it's social media or having somebody from officiating come out and say, hey, let's look at the play. Here's what happened. Here's what the officials saw. We don't think this is a foul. We don't want this going forward. I think there needs to be more of that. They didn't have that early in the season. You didn't hear anything from officiating. I think they've started to head down that path a little bit, whether it's their Twitter account or other things that they're doing. But I think that is important because fans, they need to know that. I don't think you give them everything because
right.
But you give them something
right.
to say, yes, we're looking at this. We understand there's an issue, and here's what we're doing to address it.
So last one for you on this. If you were still the head of officiating, I'm making you, just for the split moment, the head of NFL officiating once again, even though you started this interview saying you're glad you're not. Would you have downgraded Tony Corrente for this or said good call? What would you have said?
No, I don't think it's a good call. I don't, I'd want to hear from his perspective like we always did, but I would want to put that out to our crews that, look, guys, this is not, we want to see more in the bench area. We want to see him in somebody's face to call this. And that would be my approach, and whether there would be something beyond that in terms of communicating that to the public, certainly to the clubs, to Chicago and Pittsburgh, you would do that. That's normal protocol. But I just don't think there's enough there to call taunting. I don't care. I don't care if it's the first quarter, with 13 minutes to go. I don't think that is what the committee intended with this point of emphasis.
Do you think that is happening today?
To be honest
your
with
best
you,
guess?
I don't know.
What's your best guess?
No, my best guess is they are going to bend over backward to try to support that call. And I think you do that in some instances because you want to support your officials, but there are times where you just can't. And my gut would tell me that I don't know if there's going to be some public proclamation that this was a good call, but my gut would tell me that they would support that call.
That's unfortunate. I'll be very honest with you. Dean Blandino right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's talk about the concept of New York. That's what we're hearing all the time, that New York is chiming in. It's New York. It's New York. I do love the fact that we're seeing flags picked up. We're seeing calls like, that's not a catch because the toe was out, and that's the ruling on the field. And then there's a huddle up, and now the ruling on the field is it's a catch because New York saw it's a catch. It saves the coach from challenging. It keeps the game moving along, and I love it. I'm enjoying this immensely. Why couldn't New York have been chimed in to basically get in Corrente's ear saying, hey, Tony, before you announce it, hang on a second. He should huddle up with his officials. Just give me a couple seconds, and then, even after he's thrown the flag, give us 20 seconds because I know that it's a head official that's throwing the flag. Usually he'll just pop it on and just say, that's the penalty. Why couldn't New York chime in and say, he didn't say anything, Tony? I know his back was to you. Pick it up. Why can't New York do that stuff on 15-yard penalties all the time about whether it was roughing the passer? We're seeing awful roughing the passer calls. We saw last night a penalty called that took a Bears touchdown away because T.J. Watt was apparently blocked below the waist. It was a whiff. He didn't get him. Like, why can't New York be chiming in more often, Dean?
Yeah, I think right now under the current rules they're not allowed to, and a lot of that comes from the replay official as well, that video assist. I think that's going to be the conversation going forward. When it is obvious that there is a foul that is not there, can they chime in? And I think that eventually, I think we're going to see some of that. I think you're going to see the face mask call, and he actually grabbed the jersey, not the face mask, and they pick it up. So I think that's coming. I think we got to be careful and mindful of you can't re-officiate the game from the replay booth. That's just not, you're gonna destroy the flow of the game. You can't have officials being indecisive because they know that they're going to immediately be looked at. But I think in game-changing situations, I think that is possible where you could have someone, whether it's the replay official or the people in New York, that can come in and say, hey, let's pick up the flag. That's not a foul. Look, if we had done that in the NFC Championship in 2018 and got a flag down for that pass interference, we probably don't go through 2019 with the replay review and all of that nonsense,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so much that can be corrected. Certainly in everybody's watching nationally televised games, Dean, because as you know from Fox with the Buck and Aikman crew and last night for the worldwide leader and Sunday Night Football, et cetera, there's all these 4K cameras. I mean, you're seeing stuff. It looks like portrait mode sometimes on your phone. You're seeing it. And so I'd love to see these things get picked up more often. It's a better game for it, and it moves faster. It really does. But I'd love to see it slow down a little bit before a 15-yarder is called. Huddle up. Because, again, that makes it look like at least it's coming from the field, and we know it's getting in their earpieces. Let's just do it. Let's do it. So
And the technology is pushing it. The technology keeps pushing it forward. It's going to get to the point where you can do it seamlessly. And like you said, the video quality is so good and the angles are so good that you're going to see more information than the officials can ever see.
I got one last for you if you have time, Dean. One last one. Did Pereira came on recently, and I think he said this, so I'll repeat it. He might have already been a bit into the Tito's. It was only 10 in the morning. So So did he say that you're involved with maybe working on a national sort of officiating crew, like to try to nationalize officiating in college football? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
Dean?
So one of the things we're working on, because I do work with the NCAA on the replay side, we're looking at maybe doing some things more regionalized. Like right now, you have the Big Ten officials work the Big Ten crews, and
don't get me started on that, Dean.
Believe me, I know. And then you have these non-conference games when Alabama plays Ohio State, and then you've got Big 12 officials. It all the perception is, well, they're Big 12 officials. They're gonna lean toward Oklahoma. Not that that's the case, but it is a perception. And so one of the things we're looking at on the replay side is, can we do more of national replay centers where, whether it's targeting or the CFP games, the neutral site games, where instead of them being Big 12 replay officials or Big 10 replay officials, they're NCAA replay officials. They have no affiliation, and it just gives you more of an appearance of an unbiased look. And that's something that we're working on, maybe testing with the CFP, some of these neutral site games, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay. So who was it was just Big Ten replay officials,
I don't want to bring up a sore subject about the Michigan State loss.
Were you in the studio for that one? Because I was too busy throwing stuff at my television set.
I could imagine. I know there was a couple of controversial calls, and Jim mentioned a couple of things. There was a controversial replay review.
By controversial, are you saying terribly inappropriate and wrong? Is that what you mean by controversial?
I mean, that might be the Michigan perspective on that, which I know you're coming from. But you're the Spartans. Maybe that's karma. They go and they lose to the giant killer Purdue Boilermakers. So it's karma, right?
Okay. No. By the way, from when you said Michigan point of view, it's actually the 2020 vision, perfect eyesight point of view. That's what that was. There's no reason for that thing to be overturned.
The Bausch and Lomb point of view. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, you're doing the Lord's work, improving officiating at the collegiate level. I'll tell you that, Dean. For sure. So good luck with that.
On it.
Thanks for the call, Dean. Really appreciate it today.
Rich.
You got it. That's Dean Blandino, everybody, right here. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.